Many people have asked me over the years, what happened to Weston? Where did your son go? Where's your son been for 5 years? Buckle up because that's a long story, but that's all right because we got a long ride ahead of us. I will first put out a disclaimer that this is a real live reunion of a mother and a son that have not seen each other's or have been kept from each other's for 5 years. So there will be no running to see each other's slow motion, happy hug reunion. There was crying involved when everything went down. I did not film it, and some people did. Names will not be mentioned in this, but that made me so mad. You do not film a child when there is trauma involved, especially when the police are there and filming the whole thing for the courts on a body cam. You do not put the children through more trauma. So that being said, let's move forward and talk about, let's start with how I actually lost Weston in the first place. I've done longer form videos of this information in detail before on my channel. I will try to link other ones that mention the whole story down below. But let's just do a quick recap. So Henry and I were living with Weston in California, and we decided it was not the best place to raise or start a family. So we moved back, and in California at the time, weed was legal, and in Maine at the time, weed was legal. But a lot of states in between, weed was not legal at the time, and we drove cross country from California. Our final destination was Maine. We did not get quite that far. We got held up in New York. We were sleeping on the side of the road, as we did many nights, because we were dirt poor and we couldn't afford a hotel all the time. And I woke to an officer knocking on my window saying he smelled weed and asking to see what we had. I showed him all of it, and he pointed at me and said, "You'll have to come with me because you're the U.S. citizen, you're the one driving the car, you're the one with the valid license." Henry offered to take the charge. My family didn't see it that way. They thought I went from one bad guy to the next. And that jumps into, I went to jail for a week. My aunt came to take my son, and I said that was fine, but my dad stepped in and thought, since, children, when they make mistakes, they have to learn their lessons and pay for their mistakes. And so he took my son and gave him back to my ex because he had no idea how long I was going to be in jail. And no one called me and asked my side of the story because Sylvie fucked up, so she's got to sit in it. She's got to pay. So needless to say, I didn't speak to my dad for about a year after that. I was so mad. That's how he got back with his dad. Short version, short form. I was stupid. I was uninformed. A lot of my mistakes when I was younger was because I just didn't know better. My personal stance on weed and all that is unimportant and not valid in this point of the conversation. I personally don't prefer it, but again, not part of this video. I get out of jail and I am sitting around in New York State. I found out in jail that I am pregnant with Naya, so here comes life fast, really fast. And I am sitting around with a friend living just on the New York side of the border, trying to figure out what to do with Weston. My ex was currently living in New York with his new girlfriend, and they had Weston staying at their house with them. I did not give my permission for that to happen. It should have been my permission given, but at this point in time, his dad only had visitation on Saturdays, and there was a reason for that. I never wanted him spending overnight with his dad. We will get into that later, the details. But anyways, it should have been my permission given, but I was fresh out of jail, and I had, for the first time, had a little something hitched to my name, and I was terrified if I made any moves then that I would lose a case forever. And because New York was not for weed, and that was my charge. It terrified me. So I just sucked it up, bit my lower lip, and went with it. Just took it as it came. I cooperated with everyone. I just let them tell me what to do, how to do it. They set up the visitation. I saw my son for days. It switched to my ex making the rule that I got visitation in Weston. I did not do anything to her. I didn't do anything to her. I just trying to figure out how to go. I missed the already bus. I just trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And she's trying to hit me with a spanker. Like, bitch, are you fucking serious? Do you know where the fuck I come from? Are you serious? Him or his girlfriend would come pick Weston up, and they would literally like rip him out of my arms crying because he did not want to leave his mother, and he had to, and he did not get what's going on because he lived with me up until he was 4, and he did not understand why he was being taken away from me all the time. He had missed his mom for a week. She was gone, and then all of a sudden he didn't live with her anymore. So I was sitting around New York with my friend trying to figure out what I was going to do to move forward. Henry had to go to Canada because nobody in my family or friends, he sat on the phone and called about bail money, and nobody would bail me out, and he didn't know how long I was going to be in jail. So he went to Canada to work so that he could pay for my bail. And unfortunately, I got out so quickly, and then I missed him because he was in another country and he had been in US so long that he could not come back to US, so he had to stay in Canada, and I sat around waiting for an enhanced driver's license from New York State because they do that. So it was about 3 months till I saw him again, and this point in time I only had a visitation for Weston, and I did not want to fight it. His dad set up a meeting for settlement of dispute, and they drew up a new contract where Weston would be 3 months with them, 3 months with us. The lady turned and looked at me and said, "Is there anything else I would want to say or bring up at this point in time?" And I was absolutely bloody terrified, shaking in my boots. I don't know why, but I did not have the guts to say that I do not trust my ex with my child overnight because of his past and the crimes that he's done. But I was too scared, and I did not say anything. So Weston went back and forth living with his dad and his new girlfriend, and then me and Henry back and forth in Canada. And that worked for a couple times until I saw Weston was just, it was too much. He could not adjust. The second he started adjusting to one home, he was uprooted and moved to the other. And he was crying all the time, and he wasn't eating. And I told Henry, I was like, that's it. Weston needs one home that's stable, that's solid, that loves him, that has a mother and a father figure, and they're going to raise him forever. And that's how it's going to be. That's how it was set up before. That's how it's going to be. I'm just going to tell my ex that Weston's staying with me, and that's all there is to it. And Henry had this grand idea because he's very empathetic to other people, that he was going to talk to my ex sweetly and not demand anything. And this is where a big misunderstanding has been for years. People think that I gave Weston up. I would never, ever give up my son. But Henry agreed to be like an intermediary, and he thought that he knew best how to deal with Weston's dad. So he said, I will offer Weston up to his dad full time because he is a single dad, and all that responsibility, he will run from it because he won't be able to handle it because his sort of new girlfriend at the time was working, and that's just, he thought that that would solve all problems without nasty words on my end saying, this is how it's going to go, and you got no say and no rights and blah, blah, blah. Well, he was wrong, and this is the one and only time that I blamed him for losing my son, and this is the one and only time that I should have fought and spoke up like crazy and say absolutely not. Because he said, yes, when can I come pick him up? And then his girlfriend tried to get me to sign papers giving up my rights of Weston forever. And I said I would never sign those papers because I stayed in the house crying the whole time because I couldn't bear the thought of it. This is not how I wanted it to be. I was going to tell him how it was. And I lost that opportunity right then. So then he went back to Wisconsin. He moved back to Wisconsin without my permission. It was ruled in the courts of law that he was ordered that the child shall not be permanently removed from the state of New York except for temporary vacations without prior court order or written consent of both parents. So he did not inform me. I found out later via my family or via his family that he had moved back to Wisconsin without my permission. Him and his girlfriend were actually split up at the time when they came and picked Weston up, and they acted like they were together in a solid family unit just so they could pick him up and get him away from me. And that was part of the condition that Henry said he needs a forever like father and mother figure in a stable home. So they were broken up and they pretended like they were together when they came to pick him up. And so I couldn't bear the thought of it. I stayed inside crying and crying. And he went back to his family and he implied that I moved to a different country, fell in love with a different guy, started my own family, and wanted nothing to do with my son. And that's what everyone on his side of the story thought for years. And that I just gave up my son and I didn't want to be his mother. And no one asked me what was going on. Nobody reached out to me. Nobody called bullshit. You guys can see throughout the 5 years, everything that was illegal and against the law, and I did not give my permission for anything that happened with Weston. Okay, so it's ordered the mother and father share joint custody of the child. Mother shall have residential placement. So Weston did not reside with me for 5 years. That was illegal. And that was not on my end, and I did not get my permission. I caved and got a hotel. I've been on the road on a bus for the last 3 days. I just need to sleep and then take a shower, sleep laying flat instead of sitting up. And yeah, I'm gonna go crash now. Got nothing left to say. 4, 5, 6, 7, 4.5 hours of sleep. Better than none, I guess. I go hop in the shower, get ready to go check out so that I can go to McDonald's, so that I can get picked up, so that I can get Weston. It's gonna be a long day of talking about stuff that has been left unsaid for years, so good thing I got sleep. I needed it to deal with what's coming. I have no idea what's coming, but I'm ready. And it is further ordered the father shall have visitation with the child every Saturday from 9:30 a.m. till 6 p.m. This is when we were living in the same area. And at such times it may be agreeable between parties. It is further ordered the child Weston is not to spend any overnights with any other adult besides the child's mother, father, immediate family, and other such persons that are mutually agreed upon by the parties. So it was ordered that like every other holiday, every other big holiday day, every other year was ordered that he was supposed to spend one with one parent, one with the other parent, so that the parents both got special holidays. Parties may modify this agreement in any manner that is mutually agreeable, meaning that the parents both agree on it and they both have a say. So Hillsborough with all the brick buildings is actually pretty similar to Farmington, but it is a little bit smaller. I feel like more people in Farmington like know each other personally though, not just like on a high level, because Mainers really like to talk and connect. I don't get that vibe. In Wisconsin, it's like you say hi if you know someone, but it's not like every time you see someone you're like, oh hi, how are you? How are the grandkids? What's up? That kind of stuff. And then it's ordered that the child shall not be permanently removed from the state of New York except for temporary vacations without prior court order or written consent of both parties. If the parent does plan to move, they had to notify the other parent 1 month prior to the planned move. And also it is ordered that the parties notify each other with any change of address, telephone number as soon as possible. And so the thing is, let's see. So Weston was not living with me. He was residing with his father. Weston spent overnights with multiple other people that I did not know and never gave my permission for, such as soon as his dad found out that he was going to jail, he contacted his ex-girlfriend and asked her to watch Weston while he went to jail for 2 years.
Our kitten's a lot of work.
For child rape. And he never was going to let me know that he was going to jail. I was never going to be notified. The intention was the 2 years were going to slide by and I not know a single thing about it. Thankfully, his one sister reached out to me and I found out, and I immediately called him and I was like, what on earth is going on? And then I found out that he had already set it up with his ex, and they were planning on him just staying there without me knowing, right under my nose. And then I would call to talk to Weston, which when his dad had him, I only was guaranteed a conversation once a year on Weston's birthday. And that's when I got a picture or two about him. Other than that, I had no contact with him. I have all the text messages saved between me and his dad, ranting about it. Talking to him once a year is not enough. That chunk of time that I just had no contact with him. So anyways, he wanted it to be under the radar. Before he went to jail, I said to him, you do not have my permission to drop my son off. I should have been the first one notified when you were going away. You cannot drop my son off at an ex-girlfriend's house. I said, if you're short on time and you have to go to jail like right now, because I think I got informed a week before he was going in, and you know the pickup and all the arrangement dates are, write a letter saying that you give permission for my dad, that is Weston's no-no, to pick him up and bring him to me in Canada. Because the long short version of the story was, once I moved to Canada, I was stuck in Canada so long. I was over there with an enhanced driver's license for New York State. I hired a lawyer to work on my citizenship after COVID, around COVID, one of those things. So I got hung up there longer because of COVID. I had Naya, I had Callie, boom. I hired a lawyer to work on my papers so I can become a citizen of Canada and get married to Henry. And lo and behold, we got caught up on a hitch. And it's because his father, Weston's father, refused to divorce me because it's against his religion. Rape seems to fit in just fine, but no, divorcing someone that you married under lies and pretenses is against your beliefs. So after years and years of excuses, that is what he settled on. So I was basically stuck in Canada. We talked to Border Control and said, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen. I've been here this long. I have a son over on that side. I have a bunch of paperwork I have to do. what am I supposed to do? If I leave Canada, can I come back? And they said, no, probably not. Don't risk it. Don't stay. Your other family's Canadian. You got a bunch of babies over here. Wait to cross until you can move over permanently. So I was legit in a pickle. So the only thing I could do was ask my dad or sibling to come bring my son over. And they are not a mother of the child, so they couldn't legally go to someone else's house and just say, Weston, you're coming with us. I'm the only one that could do that. So I told his dad to write a paper before he went to jail, and I got no reply. So then his girlfriend has my son for at least a year at her house, around a year, and she controls the conversations. I get to talk to Weston a lot more than when his dad had him, about once a month, but these are like 5 minutes to a half hour once a month. Sometimes, maybe occasionally, I got twice a month call, but it was all on her time. And she called me crying, saying, my mother heart would do anything for your son. And I was like, oh yeah, I am his mother. This situation is so messed up. If you're from on the outside of this is so ridiculous. You should not even be involved. If you are involved, if you are a kind-hearted, Christian, caring, loving person like you claim to be, then you would reunite a mother to her son and bring him to me, if at all possible. We offered his dad to pay for the whole trip here. I feel like I'm dragging this out with unnecessary extra information, but the truth is this video is very sensitive, and I have stayed up most nights because I did want to put people's names on here and phone numbers so that you guys could vent to them, but I realized that that is illegal and invasion of privacy. And then I think about how these people have passed out my number and address to everyone in their church because they think that Weston is here with his sinner mother, living with someone who is not her husband because she's in the middle of divorcing her true husband that she vowed before God to be wed to, which also is bullshit because we had a quick elopement, find a guy offline who can do a legal thing. We had some witnesses sign a bloody paper, do it quick as possible. And the second that was finished, we were supposed to be man and wife. And everything about that was built on lies because I didn't know about his past and what he did growing up, and that he was absolute sicko and pervert and stayed a predator. And I found out that stuff later when I got pregnant with Weston, and my journey to motherhood has not been easy because I didn't want to be a mother. The way that I became a mother was by force because it was the last straw of a conservative man to keep a wife who didn't love him stuck, supposedly. But I finally truly learned when it's time to walk away and overcome fear and call shots and start learning about myself and healing. And so that is how we walked away and separated. And from that moment, well, in my mind, I didn't even really truly marry him. So I've been staying up late every night, tossing and turning, thinking about how intimate these details are and how personal it is, and how I've kept silent for years and years because of shame tied to my name, and wondering of other people's opinions of me, and listening to questions and quietly just sucking it up because that's what expected of me. And everyone would always ask me how I was doing it, and they didn't know how I could handle it. And I was thinking I couldn't handle it one bit. And every single day I woke up thinking about my son and that I would be a terrible mother until I got him back. Weston is at the ex-girlfriend's house, who is now married and has 2 children of her own and still has her hold on my son, which I really could not understand why that she was so set on keeping my son when she had her own family unit. And I also do not understand how her husband put up with the way that she was constantly dealing with her ex, because that is a big family divider. And I didn't have that kind of relationship or communication, even though I was the other actual parent involved. So she eventually got sick of Weston, and man, I have heard some stories from Weston about him living there that was not a suitable living situation, and that makes me so mad that I had no control over it, and I just had to listen to whatever she said and go by her rules for fear that I wouldn't ever get to talk to him again. Anyway, she got fed up with him, and she said that she needed to focus on her own family. Wow, about time. And she needed Weston to go back to Wisconsin for his mental health. I was not informed about this move prior to it. When they were considering moving Weston was told not to tell me anything on the phone. I could hear something in his voice that something was off, and I was trying to ask him questions about it, and he said he was not allowed to tell me or talk to me about it. Well, I confronted her about it, and I said, you don't understand. If he is getting moved, I need to know. I'm his mother. I legally need to know. And she's like, this conversation is really hurting my feelings. I have to go and I have to pray about it. And so she ghosted me for like 3 months, and then she texts me and she's like, so Weston has moved back to Wisconsin to be close to his dad, and he's staying with so-and-so. And then I went and I immediately called that lady, and she's like, oh, I'm not this person, I'm that person, because Weston is not staying there, he's staying here with us. I was wondering where you disappeared to, because I haven't heard from you for ages. I was like, yeah, there's a reason I disappeared. I wanted to be far away from this situation and separated as possible. Lots of pain has been involved. So anyways, he was moved there without my permission, and I was informed afterwards that he was moved. And then I was also told by the ex-girlfriend that these people would do 3-way calls with me, with Weston and his other guardian. And I was like, who's his other guardian? She's like, well, me, of course. So that's why I called the people he was staying with, and I said, she is not the mother. She has controlled the situation long enough. I want to talk to my son alone. And so for the first time in a couple of years, I finally got to communicate with Weston a good bit more, like twice a week. Well, like a couple times a month. I got to communicate with him, and it was not supervised. It was not on speakerphone. He was allowed to walk away. He was allowed to video chat me. And we began to form a bit more of a relationship. He showed me his cats. He showed me his school setup. We talked about the kind of things he liked. And fast forward to, we moved to Maine. And the intention for me was always, as soon as I got stateside, once we got settled, cleaned up the cabin, as soon as we got all our ducks in a row, the intention was always for me to go pick Weston up. So Henry agreed we should go as a family, and he would be back up. We told the people that were watching Weston that we wanted to come see Weston. They were hemming and hawing about it because they didn't know that they could give permission with his dad in jail. And I was like, is this, are you for real? I'm coming to see my son. Like, we're coming as a family before his dad gets out of jail. It's on purpose. It's very intentional that we are coming to see Weston now when we're ready. So Our friend came over, watched all our animals. We loaded up our farm dogs, our Great Pyrenees puppies, so they would not run off. And that is the first trip that you saw to Wisconsin. I got to Wisconsin. I saw Weston. It was awkward at first. I felt like I was walking into his family home and I was a stranger there. And it was very, come in, sit down. We had a lot to talk about that didn't involve the children. I basically told my whole horrible life story in as few words as possible. Sat down, told them how we got there. I was so upset because this guy is a deacon or bishop or a preacher in a church. And nobody ever reached out and called me and asked, what is going on? Why is the mother not involved? Him and Weston's grandpa, his dad's dad, were sitting down in their living room discussing Weston's future. And no one even thought to reach out to the mother and just took his dad's word for it when he's the one in jail. And I cannot believe that. Like, I could not fathom that. And I sat down and I told them how I got there and what happened. And it still was, it was like it went in their ears and out. They didn't care. They were in the right. I was in the wrong. So I didn't film a lot of that because of Weston's space and privacy was very important to me, and it being our first seeing in 5 years. And I talked to him. We had a lot of fun times. We went out to eat. But I sat down and I talked to him and I said, I just wanted you to know that I've always wanted you. I've always loved you. I've thought of you every single night and every single morning. And our separation was not by choice. It was literally like force of hand, and everyone and everything controlled it. And I had no say in the matter. And I couldn't fight it till now because I was in a different country, and now I'm here. As soon as I could come, I came. And that was a hard conversation. And he cried and I cried. It was definitely very difficult. And then I asked him because I wanted to be fair to him. He's moved around so many times in his life. I wanted to ask him if he wanted to stay there. Or I tried to talk him into coming with me, all the things that he could do, what we would do. You know, I gave him a whole rundown on what our family was like, what we like to do. I thought it would be fun for him to discover life and freedom like he was used to when he was younger. And he didn't want to come. He wanted to stay. So I kind of wanted him to come back with us and visit, and then if he didn't like it, change his mind. But the father of that home's like, nope, not now. I don't think I have ever stayed up till 3 in the morning. And my bus was supposed to come at morning 1:45. I don't think I've ever been up that late, let alone till 3. And then sleep 4 hours and then have to get up at 5 or something. And then sit for 4 hours till you catch the next bus at 10 a.m. in New York City. I'm dead. My eyes are as red as my face, and my face is like red. You guys will probably never see me this dead my whole life. I am pacing the bus stop right now so that I do not pass out. And this station isn't even shady, but New York is going to be shady, and I'm going to have to stay up. There's no coffee here. The longer I talk or look at my phone or do anything, the worse it is. I can just pace. There's no caffeine in the station. Did I say that? That's that. And it was not his place to say, but that's what he said. So we left again without him. It was a long, hard trip back. We were exhausted, and Henry and I were not happy that we left without Weston. We felt like we did all that traveling and all that crazy hardship to come home empty-handed. And I wasn't sure if I made the right decision, but I couldn't tell. And I'm not an indecisive person at all. Once I have my mind made up, I've had my mind made up. But I came home and I sat on my porch, and for like 2 weeks, I thought about it. I was at war with myself. I'm like, well, everyone's always told him what to do. He wants to stay there. It's a nice home. It's a nice setup. Sometimes I think they can give him better food than I could, or better socialization. But if I really think about it, if I really think about who I want Weston to be when he's 18 years old, if I really think about the future, if I really think about the man I want him to be, and the man I see, the man I envision him as, who he is, and what he could be, and the potential, I cannot leave him there. Especially with his dad giving him. I cannot let his dad raise him. I cannot. Like, the kind of man that his dad is, a predator to women, and to view women like that, and to see women only as objects and bodies and not people with souls. And the other extreme of the people that were raising him, the church, where women have to look and be dressed so conservatively as to not stumble up a man, because God forbid a woman's wrist is showing and then a man thinks about having sex with her. Like, that is the kind of mindset he will have towards women and their bodies if he grows up in that kind of conservative church, and that breeds predators. Because I couldn't do it. I said, nope, I have to go back. And Henry said, if you're going back, you have to come back with Weston. You have to. So make sure your mind is made up, and then go do it, because this is the last of our money that we have in the bank. So I went and I called the girl that's playing the role of mother, and I say, I'm coming for my son. This is the day I'm coming. I'm going to do this the good way. I'm just coming to get him. If the law has to get involved, because I will not physically, remove Weston from the premises. He's a 9-year-old boy. I will call the law, because I'm the mother. He should be with me. That's how it's going to be. I'm going to say, Weston, I'm your mom. You're coming home with me. And if he didn't want to come, I was going to call the cops to enforce that and to back that. So I used the last of our family money, and I got in a bus. I took this long road trip back, and I got there. And again, I had long talks with the family, because they were going to do anything they could to deter me from my determination to pick up my son. And I sat and I talked to his dad's older brother and his wife, poured my heart out, and I told them everything that their brother had done to me over the years, and how this wasn't a revenge thing. This was about me getting back my son, because I want to raise him for his future, and because he should be with me. I'm his mother. And also because everything that happened the past 5 years was illegal, and none of it had my permission. And they were like, when I left that conversation, I thought it was smooth. I thought I could have trusted them with my life. And I gave them all the information. I said, this is when the pickup's going to be. I want you to be there. If, things go south, it'd be nice if you're just there for Weston's sake. And so the older brother shows up the next morning when I call the cop, and there's a whole bunch of people there from church that have been involved. And I told Weston that he was coming with me, and then the cop asked me about the court-ordered papers, and unfortunately, I thought I did not have them, so I went there without the court-ordered papers. And I called Henry to check my important paper bag, because I thought they had been lost. And then he found them. And I asked the cop, I was like, can I show you a picture of these papers? Because all this time I thought they were lost in the mail when we were moving. And then my partner actually finds them. And he's like, nope, sorry, I need you to physically hand me a paper. So you need to stay here till Monday and contact this person, this person, this person. And I want you to come in downtown to the sheriff's office and talk to me away from all these people in this scenario. So I had to spend the night in Hillsboro, and then we had to try the whole thing over again. And I went to church. I was planning on heading back Saturday on the bus with Weston, but because I only had, my birth certificate and my marriage certificate proving I was the mother, that was not enough. I had to have the court order paper to hand in. So I ended up staying at the same house that Weston stayed at. They were gracious enough to do that because I do believe they thought I would change my mind once I saw how kind-hearted they were, which, don't get me wrong, they were kind-hearted and they were the best home Weston ever lived in, but still not who I want him to become in any way, shape, or form. So I stayed with them. I went to church with them. I met Weston's friends. Every single person at the conservative church tried to talk me out of taking my son home. Everyone was like, well, I encourage you to win his heart and keep building a relationship with him, but you should not rush this. You should not force this. If you do, it will destroy your relationship forever. All this bull. And then, to make matters worse, I was very uncomfortable in their church because I was probably the only one not wearing a homemade dress. And just because I was wearing a skirt and shirt, I felt like I was standing naked before their men because of how they view women's bodies. So it was really uncomfortable for me. I could just feel all their stares because they are basically bred to be predators in churches like that because they are only socializing with their women, and their women are only dressed how they're supposed to be. And that's just, if they see anything else of a woman's body, then they're just staring. They can't help it. They're just so protected and so isolated that they get into trouble. Very, very, very much trouble. And nobody ever talks about sex or body parts or informs people. These people that Weston was staying with, they actually had talked to their children, and their family I must exclude from this weird sexual predatory problem. Like, they obviously have seen it too much in their fellowship in their churches, and they talked about it. But most of the young men from that church were definitely porn addicts to the point where they didn't even try to hide it. And it made me really, really uncomfortable. Weston's dad's sister was coming up to help me with the situation because she was the only one throughout the years that informed me of what was going on and actually knew both sides of the story. Nobody else involved, any family members, actually knew what happened on my side or cared to. They just took the side of his dad, like whatever his dad said went. And so they just thought I was a checked out mom that didn't care about my son because I left him for a new life. And nobody knew how messed up and controlled the situation on my end actually was. So she came in the middle of the night so that early Monday morning she was there, and we had to run around and do tons of paperwork, like get emails to get the court order, and then it was just a lot of official paperwork in a certain order. And then I went into the sheriff's office alone and I talked to someone, and the guy said that he knew what was going down with those people because they were conservative. And while their beliefs were not that different from his own, I said, me as well. I also believe in God and I'm a Christian. But he could tell why they did not want to give Weston up. And it was because they have raised him, according to their standards. And to them, I look, like super, super liberal. And he knows it's not because I'm not a bad mom. He's like, I can tell you haven't been in Canada, because I told him why I was stuck in Canada for 5 years. He's like, I can tell you weren't on a drug bender. You're a good mom and you care about your son. And as soon as you could come here and get him, you did. And it was so hard for me to see that I could tell him that and he saw it directly. And I think that was the first, when I dealt with the cops for the first time, is the first time I actually dealt with my emotions and cried about it, because for so many years I held it in and I never ever thought about myself or how I felt in the scenario. I always thought about how Weston was doing and how the situation was for everyone around me, including Henry, and how he was doing dealing with my ex. I never dealt with how I felt. And when the officers saw that right away, you know, like that I was good to my word, and they believed me and they saw it and they wanted to help and they cared and they knew why the other people were resisting me, it felt so good to have someone who was outside of the situation, who just knew what was going on and that they were there to help. So Monday, the officer came and he talked to Weston. Weston didn't want to go. The other people were resisting. It felt like it felt like they thought my son was a martyr, that he had to come with me, because they were like, more of the church members were there and they were singing and they were gathered around, and I'm sure there was praying and there was lots of crying. And I was trying not to cry. I was trying not to faint. I was trying not to puke. And I was just like, they were not making it easy. They were making it seem like they were the mother and I was an outsider. Why would I dare be here? I felt like I was stealing their son. I felt guilty because I showed up and my son that I hadn't seen for ages was surrounded by them. And then the officer had to say, well, I know everyone wants what's best for Weston. What's best for Weston is to go with his mother. And then the sister spoke up, the one who had, kept in touch with me for ages, and she said, hey, I can feel it, like the vibe in this room, like the way you guys are reacting towards Sylvie is making him more likely not to want to go with her, because he can feel the vibe you guys are all giving off towards her. There was a lot of tension. It was probably the hardest thing I'd done in my whole life. And I thought it was never gonna end. And I was so mad because the older brother was like, the second we walked into the door with the officer, he was on the phone trying to get other legal documents to stop me from taking Weston. And I felt so betrayed. And then CPS had to be called, and the CPS lady said, so I heard you and your partner went to Canada because you were running from the law, like we were some kind of criminals. And I went straight back in there because I told him and his wife in confidence what happened, that I went to jail because I had weed, which was not legal in New York at the time. It was for a week. It was no big deal. It's not on my record. And then after Henry bailed me out, I moved to Canada to be with him because I was pregnant with his child. And then we lived in Canada together. There was no crime involved. And then I went in, I was like, so I just heard from CPS that I left the country because I was running from the law. I'm just so glad that I left that house with Weston. We walked away together. It was hard. Our car started leaking oil when we left. That was actually a good thing, a godsend, because it helped Weston to overcome the whole situation, and he stepped up, and he was a man, and he helped us change the oil. Then we got a hotel. We went swimming. That was fun. I heard over and over that Weston was terrified of water because, I can't even begin to describe the stories and how many things got twisted in words. And one person said one thing and one person said another. When I got Weston away from them, I was shocked at how different he was than they said. I feel like he was so controlled. He did not have the freedom that he needed to express himself and be who he actually was, like he used to have when he was young with me. I can just see it coming back already, that, spark that individuality, that creatism. He's just, I see the sparkle in his eye, the confidence, and I'm intending to keep it there for life. So we had pizza, we had a long bus journey, we had a trip, we had a talk. We talked about, I told him, I said, our home is a bit different than the home that you're used to. We don't have all those rules, but we do have some things that are important to us. And one thing is that we view all people as valuable in the eyes of God, and we don't talk about other people. We don't talk about their shortcomings. We don't talk about if someone is rich or poor or fat or short, or we love people. We don't judge people. I told him that. I said that is probably different than, because I heard him whispering about people on the road trip. And I was like, no, you don't say that. You don't talk about people. That is a valuable person. That is a soul. That is someone that God loves. You do not measure yourself more valuable than them. So that is an important thing to us, not making other people feel small, not bullying people, loving people, caring for people, not judging people, very big. And then the other thing is we do not do lies in our house, because lies are where sin abounds, in the secret, silence, dark, all the sneaking around. If stuff is openly talked about, like people's body parts, then it's not something that people have to be ashamed about. It's not something that is hidden. It's not something that builds curiosity. If children know what people's body parts are at a young age, proper names, they can tell if someone is touching them inappropriately, and we can discuss it at the table as a family. Lies are not accepted in our house, and they will be dealt with. Other stuff, kids fighting, goofing off, playing, go for it. Be yourself. But we don't make other people feel small, and we do not lie. Those are our household rules. I also told him, I said I was glad that I got to experience the road trip with him, because it was probably the last quiet time I would have with just him individually, because when I go home to all those other children, I'm not just his mother. Again, I'm all their mothers. And so we had an amazing time. We played games, we watched movies, we watched lots of Mr. Beast. We talked, we had a lot of junk food or treats that we don't normally have at home, and we just enjoyed the time together. By the time I got home, I felt like I had built the relationship, and I was wondering why everyone said that I would never get there, because he's 9 years old. So anyways, now you guys know why I lost him, what happened, the whole story, where he's been all this time, how I did not approve of it, and how I got him back. I feel like a lot of this situation, I got into it because I was too nice and not smart enough. Well, not anymore. So I hope you enjoyed seeing Weston back with our family, and I'm excited for you guys to see what the future holds for our family of 4 all together. We are 6 now. It feels great that we're all back together again. And in case you guys did not know, Weston has a YouTube channel. I will also link it down below. He's very excited about it. He wants to be a future Mr. Beast someday. He's starting out a little different than Mr. Beast videos when he was young. I would say his Weston's videos are way more interesting already. And so go give his channel some love. Check it out. Watch some of his videos. Leave him a comment of encouragement, because he really wants to grow and he's willing to put in the work. So thanks so much for being here and listening to this long, wretched story, and hopefully I was not confusing. You can leave comments down below, encouragement, tips, advice, help, whatever you got under your belt, I'll take it.